Welcome to the podcast where together, every Monday, we explore hospitality in its very broadest sense. From culture and cooking, cocktails and coffee, nutrition and farming, politics and animal welfare, organic and sustainability, family and business, entrepreneurship, and much, much more. Come and learn with me, Mark Cribb, about where our food and our drink comes from, and the businesses and, more importantly, the human beings that thrive on where we decide to spend our time and our money. Sign up to our weekly newsletter at humansofhospitality.co.uk and hit subscribe on your podcast player of choice. In this week's episode, I was pretty desperate to get out into the real world and find a safe way of meeting an actual hospitality professional in the flesh. So I've kept it pretty local and I visited the Captain's Club Hotel in Christchurch, Dorset. Now, I've been wanting to chat to MD Tim Lloyd for a while. I knew his story was a great startup success. From honing his skills in hotels on an employed basis, to learning the art of the restaurateur with his own ventures, to taking all of that knowledge and finally getting to apply it in his very own hotel with his partner Rob. And the Captain's Club is a special kind of place, whether simply attracting the locals for a light lunch or maybe a few cocktails as the sun sets over the beautiful river right outside, or perhaps mingling with famous guests such as Hugh Grant or even the Gallagher brothers. They've really found a way of becoming the heart of their local community. Tim's very humble and he's easy to chat with about the journey. He makes it all sound too easy with a detail here and the right team member there. But Tim and Robert have an attention for detail and a genuine love for their crazy hospitality adventure, no matter how challenging it gets. And they've certainly had their challenges. From planning permission impacting the business model, leaving them just £1 million short of having enough money to open up. And then having finally got the doors open, wondering if they'd run out of cash before they could turn their dream into a success. But 14 years later, they're still going strong, or at least they were until the pandemic struck. But in typical Tim style, he's taking it in his stride, and whilst nervous about the future, he and Rob are investing in the property, and more than hoping, they are planning on reopening for a busy summer this year. I hope you enjoy this chat about perseverance and the meandering journey life can sometimes take, but how, if you simply take the first step, then the adventure can be pretty rewarding and exciting. Enjoy the show. Tim Lloyd, Managing Director of the Captain's Club Hotel. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast today. Although really, I should say, I'm joining you. And what a treat it is to finally get to come and do one in face-to-face. You've got, it couldn't be more COVID secure, really, could we? Because we've got an entire hotel to ourselves. But for people listening, can you just explain where in the world are we, please?
Yeah, we're here in Christchurch, Dorset, which is sort of in between Bournemouth and the New Forest. We're right on the River Stour, which is a great location. Sadly, we're empty at the moment, like everybody else, as we're in another lockdown. But yeah, we're here and ready to tell the story.
Yeah, you very kindly sat me with the view as well, Tim, which is very kind of you. You've got your back to the river.
I know, but it's a shame. It's a miserable day today. It's raining, really, and we should be outside on the terrace with a gin and tonic. Yeah, and here we are inside with a coffee. I
was so excited to actually get to come and chat to somebody locally, because I've done so many of these recently on the sort of Zoom equivalent, I suppose. Zencaster, I should give them a plug. That's the app I use. And but what a treat it is to come and actually have a cup of coffee and a proper chat. So. Anybody locally, Bournemouth Way, will definitely know this hotel. It's exceptionally well known. You've got an incredible location. You've got a great reputation. But for those people sort of who don't know it, can you just explain a little bit about the Captain's Club? How many rooms, sort of size of the restaurant, just some maybe some numbers that give people context?
Yeah, okay. We were a newly built 14 years ago, which we have 29 units of accommodation, but actually that's 44 bedrooms because we've got 12 2- and 3-bedroom suites, so it makes it sort of quite different. So it very much attracts the family market as well, because all the suites have their own living rooms and kitchen dining areas, and our unique thing is all the rooms are river facing. So there's no back rooms whatsoever. So there's no glimpses, no car park views. Everything is of the river. And the great thing about this location is the river's a very busy river. So not only have we got all the boats, we're right next door to the rowing club here in Christchurch, and they do a lot of training. So there's always activity going on both sides. And on the other side of the river, it's the Stanpit Marsh and Hengistbury Head Nature Reserves, which is just great for people to go and visit. And it's so close by, and we're lucky to have a ferry right outside the door. So it literally takes people across the river when they want to walk down Hengistbury Head, or they can take a boat right down to the beach houses at Muddyford, which are very famous across the world for being so expensive.
Being really pricey.
Being really pricey.
More expensive than sandbanks, I think, on a
They
square footage
are.
perspective.
One's just sold for over £350,000. And bear in mind, there's no toilets and no hot and cold running water.
Yeah, I mean, they're tiny, aren't they? They must be, I don't know,
really tiny.
15-foot square, maybe, something like that.
I think it's just the unique location and the peaceful environment, and it's just somewhere different for people to go.
And the fact they can get the ferry here for a gin and tonic.
And the fact they can come up here for a gin and tonic or lunch.
Yeah.
We're very much a community-based hotel in the fact that we attract people who are locals as well as people come from further afield. We say our audience gets younger as the day goes on. We have quite a great local older following, should we say. We're always criticised for being the oldest town in the country for people who are resident, but believe me, everybody's vibrant and happy to go and great fun. So
is that actually true? Is it the oldest town?
Yeah, it is.
Really?
It is, yeah. It's got the reputation for being the place to retire.
Right.
But, people come here because they want to move to somewhere that gives them a lot.
If it's got the official stats of being the oldest place, that would be a good thing, because that would mean that it just means everybody lives a long time. Which
it does, yeah, absolutely.
It's such a beautiful spot, isn't it?
And the good thing is, from before, obviously not with interest rates being so low, but the disposable income was pretty good.
Yeah.
So we're lucky to gain from people who want to spend a bit of money, come for morning coffee, maybe lunch, afternoon tea, and then as was, we've got quite a large bar, food and beverage area. Some people even consider us to be a sort of restaurant with rooms, as it is a big food and beverage operation. So we have 100 covers across the restaurant and lounge area, and we've had to make some changes with the COVID. So our lounge area is now moved. We've moved that into the function room, because obviously we can't do any functions, and we've extended the restaurant with spacing so that we can accommodate probably 120 now down here.
That's a good idea, isn't it? Yeah. And how many can you sit on the terrace? Because that's massive as well.
Oh, that's 120 again.
Is it?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
And then
yeah.
more with
And that's because of social distancing. That's with it all laid out separately. Right. So it is more and can be more, because obviously the terrace extends all the way along the front of the river and in front of our function rooms as well, which are usually good places for weddings and events, but
amazing. I'd forgotten how I have not been for a couple of years, much to my shame, and I'd forgotten how beautiful it was. So, because I can walk to my place, which is also very lucky to have it on the seafront. Yeah,
you've got a great location.
Yeah, it's lovely. But you're right, actually, in the fact that rivers in many ways are better, because you've got so much going on, haven't you, with the boats and the people coming past. And all that
I think the
stuff,
activity is great.
Yeah, we'll call it a draw, Tim.
Absolutely,
I like the picture. I can watch the sunset.
Yeah, you can.
And you've got the people.
And you've got the surfers.
Yeah, I got the surfers. Yeah, I got the reef. Yeah, let's not go there. It is really unique and became really well known very quickly when you established it. Are you from Bournemouth, and was there sort of a gap in the market when you set this place up? Were you trying to do something different, and what sort of opportunity did you see?
Yeah, I think it was a unique opportunity because it was the first time a new build was going to go anywhere near Christchurch, and I do have to say the planning was quite a difficult time for us.
That's one of my questions, actually.
It was.
So what a surprise. They're normally so amenable.
I know. I think because at the time it's Christchurch Town Council, Borough Council, and a few of the councillors have been well established in position for a long time, and I think to have something that was modern, in fact one of the councillors made reference to it being a monolithic monstrosity on the riverside, really? Which is a quote that stayed with us for a long time.
Do you have that at the bottom of a brochure somewhere?
Yeah.
Monolithic monstrosity. It's quite hard to say, isn't it?
And I mean, I think the opportunity came for us to buy the land when it was on the site of the former Pontins holiday camp.
I remember that. Yeah.
And that was demolished, and the rule of the site was that there had to be some tourism function going on, and that had to be a major part of the development. We were not the people involved in the first instance, because somebody was put up plans to do a hotel for all, which with full access for all disabled people right across the board. It was a unique development. Sadly for them, probably beneficial for us. They couldn't get the funding to deliver the project. So when the opportunity came again for us to buy the land, we went into partnership with somebody, a developer who'd had the opportunity to buy the land. So we went in on sort of 50-50 partnership. And the idea was going to be relatively simple. They were a developer, they were going to build it, and we, as my partner Robert, we're hoteliers with background as being hoteliers, we're going to have the opportunity to run it, and it was all going to be fantastic. And then, of course, it was my job to go to the bank and find the funding to support our project. And at the time, probably 16 years ago, it had become quite common in London, for example, to do a guest invest program. So people had the opportunity to, for example, with us, to purchase the suites, to have them as sort of second homes, and sort of not make the project self-funding, but it would help with the costs of development. And it was a great opportunity, as we had the opportunity of having the 12 suites in our plans. That did not come off because we had to go to the bank and do the business plans, and it turned out that anybody buying a second home as an investment like ours, it involved VAT payment on top, which people couldn't claim back. So basically it was going in the sort of wrong direction. But fortunately we had very supportive bank at the time, NatWest, who we're still with now, and we decided that it was an opportunity to do it without it being having other people involved in living here, make it much more easy to run. So that's sort of what we did. But of course, a condition of that was it had to be built by a commercial build company as opposed to a private development company, which meant that the people we were on board with were not able to build it. We had to go to outside contractors, which was Molam, the Molam Group, who subsequently were bought out by Carillion. And, what happened to them, but fortunately we'd got through the majority of our time of insurance with Molam Group. So, it was all right. We did it and we built it. So we did part company with the two people we went into business with.
It was Eddie Mitchell originally, wasn't it?
Absolutely.
So,
Eddie and Brenda.
I was going to ask if he was involved, because he's an interesting character. So whether he was involved in the day-to-day running, but he wasn't. He was part of the team.
He was part of the opening team. He was part of the design team. Well, yes, you can recognise probably the features of the building. There's some fine lines with the architecture that he developed on Sandbanks. And for we felt sorry because it was a shame that he couldn't fulfill his part of the dream, but we split amicably. He went his way and we went ours, and
because that was my other question, I suppose, around I always think people listening, you've got all sorts listening to the podcast. Some people are very well established, but I think it's always good for new people coming into the industry to work out how you can develop. So Richard from Calcott, who I was chatting to last week, was great in the fact that they started with 7 bedrooms, selling Granny's house, and then did end up having to get a customer to invest in the business to enable it to develop. But I think it's quite a nice story that you can start with nothing. This was a big project for your sort of first own hotel.
Yeah,
was it 8 million or something?
Yes,
to actually build it.
Yes.
So the financing of that, clearly you didn't have 8 million, but the banks will help. Because I suppose normally a place like this would have been that mixed residential use.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
all that kind of stuff. But
as I say, that's when it started, and then when the numbers added up, it was with the investment from the people outside.
Yeah.
Fortunately, exactly the same as you just said about Richard at Calcott. Same happened here. We had 2 of our friends who, from many, many years, and we were restaurateurs in the town before, who were long-standing customers of ours, did come along and our it did help us to carry on with the dream, as it were. Yeah. And they remain as silent partners in the business. And we also have Robert's close friend, both our close friends, but Robert went to school with Sarah Ross, and Sarah's also involved with us. She's got her own business in Bristol, but she looks after or supports me with the finance aspect of the building and about everything that's going on here. But she's a great strength and having the background with us as well. So it's good. It's team, because it needs it. As you say, we're just to hoteliers, and this is a big project.
It is, yeah. You weren't multi-millionaires who. I think I read somewhere how annoyed you get when everybody goes, "Oh, the owners of the Captain Club, multi-billionaires." Have they bought themselves another Range Rover?
I know exactly.
I get the same as and yours is much more prestigious, but I get the same with having a couple of restaurants, and people always think you're loaded, and you think, "Oh my goodness."
I know, if only they knew.
Saw what goes on behind the scenes, but I think it demonstrates with these things, you just got to be brave enough to start, haven't you?
Yeah.
And once you've started, it's going to go one way or the other. You're either going to find a way and navigate your way through, and whether it's customers, friends, or something will happen. But I think too many people are afraid to just start the process, and ultimately, all too often somehow the stars align. So no, that's good. So that residential element, because I suppose that was my question when with other people in the running, because it's an amazingly unique location to find, and so good. All too often places like this do just end up with a super luxury block of flats. Most of the river, certainly on this side of the river, seems to be sort of private houses and stuff like that. Is. Was there a danger at any point that it would just become resi, or was it was basically locked into planning that it had to be something commercial?
It was completely locked into planning that it had to be something to do with tourism, because the effects of losing Pontins was huge here. The impact on the town. I remember we had to do an economic impact report to show how much we were going to generate, and they were looking at it against what Pontins did before. Well, I mean, they had a huge area behind us now. Here at the hotel is a residential development which was part of the site, which is where all the chalets were and their swimming pool was, and where we are now is slightly back from where their big ballroom was and their sort of dining area. But obviously the turnover in guests at Pontins was huge, and I remember when we first came to Christchurch in the early 80s, I'll explain why we came to Christchurch, but in front of our restaurant, which was in Church Street, right by the Priory, in the evenings, you couldn't put a stick between the people walking down that would come, and all the shops would be open and stay open until 10 o'clock in the evening, and it was huge. I mean, our restaurant was sort of 2A rosette, so it was used as special occasions, but we definitely, we benefited from people who were staying here at Pontins, and so the effect it had on the town when it closed was huge, which is why they put the condition on that this would need to be tourism. Right. And I'm glad it has.
Yeah, definitely. No, I always think, much as I moan about planners as well, and I'm sure you do, at least some things are protected. Why did Pontins sell? Do you know? Did they just need the cash?
It wasn't to be honest, it wasn't a big enough site for them, right. And things were developing. I mean, they were going to have to compete with the likes of the developing new Centre Parks ideas, and so it just wasn't right for them to continue on this site. But it's quite interesting because one of our very first employees here, her mother was a PA to Fred Pontin, and he was based here. Wow. So she comes in with some stories.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah,
I love it.
She comes in and she goes, "That member of staff wouldn't be here if Fred was here." So, oh gosh, she's quite overbearing, but the good stories.
Yeah, you still get that level of feedback. So prior to this, then you had at least had a career in hospitality. You mentioned then the restaurants. So can you just tell me about those? How long did you have the restaurants, and what were they?
Okay, well, I started from the age of sort of 15 when I wanted to go into hotels, and at 16 I went to catering college. I came from a small village in North Wales, so hospitality was sort of very different. I was a farmer's son, and we didn't go on holiday at all, but I did experience a holiday at the age of 14, which was funny really, because it was a trip with friends of ours, and it was to the Isle of Wight, close to here, but it was the very first time I'd actually stayed in a hotel, and I was absolutely fascinated with it, and I just couldn't believe it, and it was such a great, if you looked at that hotel now, it's closed down, and it's and at the time it was more coach holidays and things like that, but for me, who hadn't experienced anything like it, it was wonderful, and I came back home to North Wales and realised that's what I wanted to do as a career. I wanted to be in hotels, so I did go to college, and I had some good placements, and it's when I joined Forte Hotels as one of my placements, which was at the Castle Hotel in Windsor, and fortunately I had a great time there, and I was offered the opportunity to go back as an assistant manager once I'd graduated, which I did at the age of 20, and I spent 4 years as banqueting and conference manager there, which was an amazing experience because it was a big facility within the hotel, and obviously being so close to Windsor Castle, we had lots of royal events and dignitaries, and Prince Philip was a member of the Rotary Club that we looked after on a Monday evening, and it was great fun. And with that company, I was able to develop to my first deputy manager position in Stratford-upon-Avon, and then I moved to Bath when Forte were investing in the Bath Spa Hotel, which was to be the first 5-star hotel outside of London for them, and it was a new build, well, partly new build, partly refurbished, and it was a great opportunity. Sadly, it was the recession, hit just after we opened, so we had to make a lot of the staff redundant, which was a really difficult time, and it was where I met Robert, who's partner now, and he was looking after food and beverage there, and I was deputy manager, and after probably 3 years there, I took the opportunity to leave to develop our own business, and we wanted to get our own hotel. That's easier said than done, so we thought we'd have a stepping stone. So we looked for restaurants, and it didn't matter where that restaurant would be. In fact, to be honest, when we did have the first time we had the details for the Splinters restaurant that dropped on our through the letterbox, it was way overpriced, so we didn't even look at it.
You were living in Bath at the time?
Yeah.
And Splinters and that's a good 100 odd miles.
Yeah, exactly.
You literally cast the net.
Yeah, all around
wide.
wherever it was.
Oh.
And then the details came back again. We looked at a few restaurants, and then one dark, dingy, horrible, it was around sort of February time, we came down to have a look at the restaurant, and it was that usual adage of when somebody's selling a business, the coffee pot was on, the smell of the aroma was great, and unbeknown to us, the business had actually closed, although they didn't sort of make that clear.
Oh, wow.
It was, we're reopening at Easter was the message, that
Okay.
we're just having a little break, but if they had closed. But they had spent a lot of money on it, refurbishing it, which was great. So we took the plunge then, which was early 80s, came to the restaurant and opened in the Easter, and what was to be a 2-year stepping stone turned into a 10-year stay.
Okay.
And the interesting thing about it is that the restaurant's been there 50, 60 years. It's got a reputation, and it's only had 4 different owners in all that time. So it's quite incredible, really. But what we did was we expanded the restaurant. We bought the restaurant that was next door. Well, it was a bookshop at the time. It was called Bookends, and we transformed it into a delicatessen, sort of a new, because that had to have retail on the ground floor, and we had a restaurant on the first floor, and it was called Pomery's, and that was really successful. And it was only when Fishworks had the opportunity to come into Christchurch. We knew Mitch Tonks, and he wanted to develop at the time, expand his business from Bath, and we sold to him to develop Fishworks.
Right. Okay. I hadn't worked out what the trigger was to sell. He's canny, that Mitch, isn't he? He's
Absolutely.
been on the podcast as well.
Yeah,
but,
absolutely.
He's just done so well with that business, I think, in the southwest. It's unusual because a lot of people would look at the locations, or certainly the towns where he's located, and I think because he's chairman or sort of some sort of role with Hawksmoor as well. They're very open about Manchester,
absolutely.
Edinburgh, London, New York, and yet there he is, grafting away down in the southwest that makes these amazing restaurants work. So, he's
I mean, Fishworks was difficult for him as well.
Yeah.
No, not that one. But it's great. The Rockfish now is open in Poole, isn't it?
It has.
So it's great. So I haven't been to that one, but
Okay, so you ran the restaurant for 10 years. Clearly, you transferred. If it was closed at the time, it presumably was because it wasn't running that successfully.
Yeah,
what did you change that made it such a success, do you think?
Well, we didn't really know we were doing anything to change it, but I think because we were complete owner operators, it was literally Robert and myself, and we brought 2 people with us from Bath. Rob Rees was our first head chef. You need to do an interview with him. He lives in Melbourne now.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Okay.
But
he's
good.
We can make that work. I will go personally.
yeah, exactly. No, he's done really well, and he was given an MBE for his services to school meals here in the UK before he left, and he was a deputy lieutenant of Gloucestershire.
Okay.
But anyway, he was our first head chef. Nice. And I think it was because we were all hands-on. We were there for all the services we did. And I think we just built up a local reputation, which I think fortunately followed us here. So that was
definitely.
Great.
Yeah. Okay, interesting. How many covers was Swinton's?
40.
Okay, plus,
yeah, it was
plus the ground floor.
It was sort of a unique, how can I say it? It was a restaurant where you had a journey in those days. So you arrived for a drink in one area, you then moved through to have your meal, and then you were taken upstairs to the lounge to enjoy your coffee and liqueurs.
Nice.
So I think it was a real journey, as opposed to probably anything that's similar now.
Yeah, absolutely, and a little bit different. So you'd always known then, because there was a bit of a time gap. Was it 4 years between closing or selling the restaurants and opening the hotel? But at that point of sale, you still had that motivation. You knew you were going to open a hotel at some point, didn't you?
The whole motivation was to do that.
Right.
Absolutely.
And you were looking for
an
existing hotel. Did you look at many? Or?
Yeah, not that many. I think we were excited once with the opportunity of a new build somehow if we could do it.
Right.
But we were invited to be to join another hotel group as sort of co-directors, but that isn't really what we wanted to do. We wanted something that was our own, or really our own project. So,
how long were you looking before this opportunity came up? In that 4 year gap, was it?
It was. To be honest, we were pretty much on to when we finished the sale.
Right.
We were pretty much on to the project because it was ready waiting. Because there's an awful lot to do beforehand.
Well, that's what I wondered is how long.
So I stayed on with the company to look after the project, and Robert went to work. As I mentioned Sarah earlier, went to work with Sarah, and then he was involved a lot with the interior design of the hotel.
Okay.
And I was involved with the setup of the finances and everything that was going on.
Right.
And it was
Did
great.
you flip a coin for that, or that was just your natural?
I think it was our natural way. I'm not interior design.
Okay. I wondered. Yeah,
he's pretty has a sharp eye for that.
Yeah.
And bear in mind, as we say, it was we're not a huge company, and we were going to the bank cap in hand for money, so it was very, very much a value engineering project to get us through. In fact, to be fair, at the end of our first calculations, we were, and it is $1 million, and we were $1 million short on what we needed. And
I still think that's pretty
our
good.
bank manager was. He sort of did help us through that, but he certainly gained on that because he had a 10% arrangement fee, which was £1 million. That's an awful lot of money. But we got there.
Yeah. Okay. Well, it's impressive. So from that design aspect, again, because I was genuinely interested, I suppose, is you hadn't come. You're not architects. You hadn't come from that design, but you were working with people who did get that, or were you very much kind of sitting down, going, right, we want a kitchen here, we want a restaurant here, this is the layout. Where did that come from? And
the original layout came from Eddie's professional background, and he had his architects involved from the beginning, and basically it was trying to work the best we could on the footprint we had. And there are some design issues here, and we had a design issue that you couldn't get from one end of the hotel to the other, which was fundamental for us.
Without going outside?
Without going outside, which is now still the same. We have got a door between the restaurant and the function room now in the middle, which we did put in before we opened, but it wasn't there at all on the original plans.
Because that was going to be, I suppose it's interesting these things that come up. I've said before about Michael Bremner, who was a chef I interviewed in Brighton, and he's very much a chef, so it was all about the food. And I tell this story a few times, but it always makes me chuckle and reminds me that, for chefs, it's always about the food. But he managed to open a restaurant, and it wasn't really until he opened that he realised that he hadn't put a bar in, because it was so much about food.
Yeah,
and he was like, where are we going to make the cocktails? Where do we do the drinks? And he had to retrofit a bar. So it's funny, the things you don't notice when things are on paper, basically, isn't it?
I think the hardest thing for us was we knew we had to have quite a bit of storage area, as you do, but all our storage areas were being taken up by plant, because we decided that we had to have air conditioning, particularly in the lounges of the suites, because they're all front facing, it's all glass, it gets hot, and we had to have air conditioning in the bedrooms and here on the ground floor. And everywhere we're going, suddenly the storage was disappearing and plant was going in place. And so eventually now, after we have opened, we've had to develop areas out the back. So we've got, our walk-in fridge is outside in a different area. Our cold store is outside in a different area because we just didn't have the space inside. And we just, and we've had to expand cupboards in the corridor to make the function corridor smaller, so that we've got storage area to put tables and chairs. Oh, it's just
funny.
Things you think with a brand new build you'd have right.
Well, yeah, but I always find it refreshing that this isn't the case, because same every build. To be fair, we haven't done a new build, so like you say, you'd like to think with a new build you could do it. But God, every building I've got is just such a pain. One our walk-in fridge down at the seafront restaurant is up 3 flights of stairs because there was nowhere to put it, and we ended up having to literally that sort of bolt it onto the top side of a building, and operationally, it's an absolute nightmare. So I suppose did you have to do any kind of significant building work post opening where you had to change something? Was there any biggie, or just that door so you could actually get from the building?
No, that was the only thing. We're lucky actually. We got 90% right.
Okay.
So he was able to operate straight from day one.
And you had the spa from day one as well?
We had the spa from day one. It's a small spa, but it was something at the time that we felt essential. I mean, at the time when we opened here, we were the sort of premier hotel in Christchurch. It wasn't necessarily a destination for 4-star hotels. It was very much a bed and breakfast, guest house, 3-star hotels, lots of caravan parks, etc. So it was a different market, and we were looking at attracting different people because we felt that Christchurch had an awful lot to offer. And I remember at the time, maybe somebody you've interviewed, I'm not sure, Nick Roach from Harbour Group, who owns the Harbour Group, telephoned and asked us about what we were doing here, and told us that he'd got the opportunity to develop the Christchurch, which was the Avonmouth Hotel, into the Christchurch Harbour Hotel, which was their first one, and asked whether he thought it was a good idea. And I think, to be honest, from our perspective, we felt that yes, if he invested there, it was much more attractive to the area to have competition or to have similar standard hotels in order to make it much more of an attractive destination to people coming away. So we worked in tandem on that. Obviously, he's slightly different position and expanded, and they've got 16 hotels now, and we're still here with our one. Yeah, I know. But it did show that Christchurch, that we were confident in what Christchurch had to offer, and we feel that, and it's worked. So
would you want 16 hotels?
No,
exactly. I think all these opportunities crop up, and oh my God, please don't let me have any more. I've got to ask before we move on: was the kitchen big enough when you opened?
Yes.
It was. Okay, that's impressive, because everywhere I go, all of my chefs are always like, I can't believe you've given us such a small kitchen. So.
Well, what we did at the beginning, in an area here, we have an open plan coffee bar area on our ground floor. We had that as a satellite kitchen.
Okay.
So we actually did food from there for in here in the bar area, but then realised that our offering could be more extensive, so we were able to relocate that back into the main kitchen. And it worked. It's big enough size.
Yeah, that's good.
So yeah, we are lucky.
Our main reason for building the wood oven, which is next door to my restaurant as a takeaway, was just because the kitchen was too small, and we just need an extra kitchen. So, okay.
Well, people say we should put that sort of facility on our terrace. You know, so
you could put a nice sort of Gosney oven out there. A little plug for Gosney local. It'd be lovely. So do you remember then? Hats off to you for building it and creating it. So go back to that sort of opening night or opening week, I suppose. Are you still, I guess, but were you very hands-on, and do you remember how it felt that first week, and what was the reception? Was it chaos, or actually?
The very first week was absolute chaos, in the fact that we were due to open on the Friday, and we'd got everything arranged. We got a civic lunch here, we got the mayor coming to cut the ribbon, we got everything planned, and on the Monday there was contractors everywhere, and I remember we sat outside. Eddie and Brenda were still involved then, and Sarah was here, and Eddie said, it's not going to happen. It will not happen on Friday. Let's face it, it just isn't. And I said, there is no choice. In hospitality, there is no choice. We are opening on Friday, and we will open on Friday. And okay, he said, right, that's fine then. So it's all hands on deck. And yes, it is all hands on deck. And we did manage to get to the Friday, and we did manage to do our civic lunch. It was the first lunch we'd actually ever done. So it's the first time the kitchen had been used, and it was 100 people. And it was, but we did deliver. But I remember the ironic thing about that was we did a key ceremony. So basically, as with all hotels, once they open, they never close.
Well, that's what we thought.
That's what we thought. So it is a shame. But we actually had the disappearance of the key. So we had a big symbolic key on the stage, and we had sort of some pyrotechnic, and we lost the key, and we'd ever be open. And here we are this year, need to find the key again. Yeah. Wow. But that first week, we did. So then once we opened on the Saturday, we did a soft opening. So we had people who were industry peers, people we knew, who came to stay and try things out, and just test the bedrooms. And I remember, what happens the first day? We go into the restaurant, and suddenly the ceiling's leaking because a bath wasn't connected properly, and the lady upstairs her water was coming through into the restaurant, and that's like on day 2 before we'd actually opened to the general public. And it's like, but those little things, you can't sort of test every little thing. It was just, but so we had those sort of teething problems. But yeah, we opened, and it was a soft opening. We just did sort of a few rooms that first week, and a few covers to get used to things, and then went on from there. But it was hugely busy from the beginning, because I think it was the first new build in the area, and I think it just people wanted to come and have a look from all around, really.
It's very hard in a location like this, I think, to open quietly, isn't it? Because everybody can see you. You're so visible.
I know, that's right.
Much as you might want.
I know.
We had the same down on the seafront, and we stupidly opened in May, I think, and bank holiday weekend or something ridiculous, and it was utter carnage. And you just thought, oh my goodness, I'd love to be on a back street right now and just be given some time
we
to
sort
build
of
up.
Timed that probably better then in that case, after what you just said. We opened in November.
Oh wow, okay,
so,
well, that was good. I was thinking Friday was a silly day, but November
November.
it's a really good month.
Yes.
We were desperately trying to get the build done ready. I said, if we miss the summer, we won't have the finances basically to get through the winter. Do you think that experience, because I've always said hotels are, you never know what's going to happen. Water through the ceiling, I don't know, whatever it might be, fire alarms going on. There's just so many things. Yeah. But and every day I used to say, look, the earlier that something goes wrong, the better, because something's going to go wrong every day in hotel management. So if you can get it done by sort of 8:30, 9 in the morning, it's kind of great. I can get on with my day. Do you think that historic experience, the fact you've been that sort of banqueting and conference manager, I presume over the years, and having your own restaurants, you'd got used to the sort of the chaos and the reactive measure of hospitality. Do you think that helped? Yeah. And did you sort of just take it all in your stride and go, look, this is what hospitality is?
I think hospitality is very much like that, but every day is different. So the experience of doing it for many, many years and understanding the pitfalls that are involved. There's always something going to go wrong every single day. There's going to be a letter that comes in, a complaint about something. There's going to be an inquiry for unusual things. There's going to be something every day, a different style of event going on. So no day is the same. But the good thing, what we have done is put together a great team of people, and we're very lucky to have loyal people who've been with us for a long time. I think a great thing is, our head chef has been here since day one.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Came over from, him and his wife came over from Burj Al Arab in Dubai, where they'd been working. He originates from Scotland. And, he's arrived here in Christchurch now, got a lovely family, 3 daughters. Amazing. Settled completely, does a great job.
14 years.
14 years. And he was here for 6 months before opening.
Okay.
So, and that's the same. We've got a housekeeper came from the Marriott in Bournemouth, and she's been here since then as well. It's people that had housekeeping, big senior positions who've been here for a long time. Our accountant's been here since pre-opening as well. So it's that loyal band of people that you're working with on a day-to-day basis.
So it's got easier then from over that first week. Well, pre-COVID,
yeah.
Say.
I think we were particularly very much hands-on for a good number of years, as we were before. And I think then as you get a bit older and time goes on and the business does change, and it gets busier and busier, and slightly different people, and your market changes, and you've got more professional people in place, or people that have gained more experience, that you can take a slightly hands-off approach, or more of a hands-off approach. But I think that's physical, not mental. I think you're always here. You're all, as anybody in hospitality is, you're always worrying about the numbers. You're always worrying about the bank. It's natural. It is. You worry about the people, because they're like family. Although there's sort of, in the summertime there can be up to 105 of us. Generally now at the moment there's 80 of us, but everybody's got their own story, and it's the HR on the people aspect of it is tough, but we try and do as best we can and develop those that we see have got potential, and we've worked together training programs and management development programs, make it fun. So I mean, last year our Juliet, who's our training person, our guest relations manager, vast experience in hotels, trained everybody in teamwork, and ended up everybody doing a skydive. So 10 of them did a skydive for charity, which was great. I was due to do it. Right. Unfortunately, I had an illness that was so I was written off by the doctor. And I was there on the day, and I was doing it, and it was all called off because of the weather. Right. And then in between that time and when they actually did it, I wasn't able then to do it after. So, but I'm going to have to do it secretly, aren't I, to get it done? Because I can't be the one not done it.
Just to show that it happened, Having been a restaurateur for 10 years and then coming to the hotel, do you think there's a big difference between running restaurants and running hotels?
Yes, there is a big difference. Because it's 24/7 completely. I mean, with the restaurant, you have got those downtimes when it is closed, when there's people not there. You can, but you've got a mix, so you've got all worries in all directions. I mean, I've always been hotelier. It's we've always been hoteliers. So doing the restaurant for that time was great experience, but it wasn't what I wanted to do forever. So this is a career that I couldn't see myself doing anything else.
It's interesting. Why did you want to add the hotel? Because it adds a level of complexity, I think, doesn't it? Once you stick a hotel,
absolutely mad. I can't. Honestly, I don't know. It's really tough.
It's funny, isn't it? But it's
but it is just there. I think that you get a lot of regulars, lots of people coming. You're doing a restaurant, but people who come and stay time and time again, people who come every year, people who come for celebrations, come and stay for the whole of Christmas, come and stay for New Year, and it is like we welcome people back after this time, and they bring relatives, and and it's got that good feel about it. We've still got that independent hotel feel as opposed to a corporate hotel feel, and I think we developed that skill, or I developed that skill from the time when I was working for the manager at the Castle Hotel at Windsor, because he actually made that hotel run like an independent hotel. So at Christmas time, all the management team on Christmas Eve would get together and do a play that we'd rehearse and have a laugh rehearsing, and just because of the history of Windsor, and he'd tell the story and the guests would be there, and it was just totally different to any other corporate hotel or any other big company hotel. It's very personalised, and I think that sort of stays with you, that you've got to create it uniquely and make each person stay special as best you can.
Nice.
So,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because it is a undoubtedly tough sector. Always open, tight margins, but there's something about it.
Yeah.
Where else would you be getting your group of people together and doing a play and meeting all these people?
I know exactly. I know that is unique. Yeah. So I think it's tough though, because as you say, the margins are tight all the way along the line, and people think you make an awful lot of money, and you don't. And it's very, very small margins. But and it's also a business where you've got to reinvest continually. You just got to. It's like Force Bridge. You've got to keep painting. We're doing it now. We've got people painting bedrooms, and we've got some bathrooms being replaced. But all when there's no money coming in.
Exactly.
So it's a worry.
We're doing exactly the same. You sort of think, my goodness, this is ridiculous. From a cash flow perspective, what a bonkers time it is to be investing. But then, it's such a unique opportunity, isn't it? Because we're closed and you just think we've got to do it. My chef came up this week and he's like, we need 2 new rational ovens. And he's been telling me for years and we just keep them limping along. And it's, it's 11 or 12 grand. And you think, you've got to sell a lot of food to make the 12k just for 2 ovens, which is such a tiny, proportion of the business. So yeah, it's bonkers, really. You really, became instantaneously famous, I think, locally. As adding something different to the mix and for real sort of quality. Were there any interesting guests? There were always rumours going around about famous guests in those first few years. Any particularly interesting people that came to stay that also really helped put you on the map, I suppose? Yeah,
we were very lucky at the beginning because we it was at a time when BIC was really
Bournemouth International Centre.
I'm with you. Bournemouth International Centre was very popular as a venue for big acts to come and play at, and we were very lucky in the fact that lots of the stars wanted to stay outside of Bournemouth, not stay in central Bournemouth, and then we were sort of seen to be a great venue for that. We've got a coach park. We had a coach park right next door to the hotel, so that was easy access for people to come with their touring buses. So yeah, we did have some famous acts. We had the Gallagher brothers from Oasis, and when they were going through their disputes, so we had one in a suite one end of the building and another in the suite at the other end of the building. Never the twain shall meet. Yeah, but it did create some publicity. We had Girls Aloud here, probably pretty early on. They were quite famous, lying here out on the terrace, making the most of the sunshine. Probably our most famous guest who put us on the map quite recently was Hugh Grant, who came to stay with his family for Easter, which was good fun. I think it wasn't the private stay that he wished it to be. I think publicity got out there as soon as they went out for dinner to the local Indian restaurant on the first evening, and then they went to a couple of other restaurants we sort of introduced them to. But they were here for a good few days, so that's good. Yeah, so that we did get our name.
Yeah.
On the map.
How do you get on Hugh Grant's kind of hotels of choice list? Is that, do you know?
I know. Well, it was to be fair to do with his father, who lives not too far away, and they wanted a family Easter. Nice. So it's good.
That's pretty cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
But good. It's nice to know that some of the rumours that I heard were true. Because really, prior to that, everyone used to go out to the Jute and Glen, I think, and places like that.
Yeah,
I think we were the first place.
Yeah, I think we were the first place with an opportunity then. Yeah. I think the greenhouse in Bournemouth now is pretty much a place where they'll go as well. Yeah. We lost, bad locally, we lost our coach parking ability as the local authority had to make some more car park spaces. So it's lost its tourist bus stops at the moment. So we're trying to fight to get those back.
Really? Yeah.
So yeah.
Okay. I never... we never had a coach park. I'll use that as my excuse. And all the way with a view for our little hotel. We had, Skinner, I've forgotten his first name. Frank Skinner, the comedian.
Oh, yes.
And Katie Price came to stay in the early days, and a few sort of,
that's good.
Random people back in the day. But yeah, it's funny who rocks up just out of the blue.
Yeah, I think they still rock up. We had Miranda Hart staying here recently, Claire Balding. We have a few still. Good, lots still come through, nice. and those that have been before always come back. McFly, for example. Really? And sadly we have Darren Brown. But obviously they've just had to cancel everything and their industry is...
Do you ever get them to do a little fringe gig outside on the faces? They're obviously playing in the big ones. Can you get them to do a little gig in the bar? Or?
Yeah. Well, it's surprisingly at the very beginning we did have quite a lot because we had the X Factor tours, which was quite big for us in the early days. I mean, in the end they didn't come to the BIC because that venue wasn't big enough for them. Yeah. But they always did renditions in the bar and played the piano. Excellent. And sang. Yeah, it's good.
It's good, isn't it? Yeah. I can always say to the Bic, I'm saying, look, we've got the lovely balcony overlooking the ocean down on the seafront. And I was like, look, if ever we can get any of those bands just to come down and do a little bit of a gig overlooking the sea, it'd be nice. But I need to work harder on that. And the other thing you did really well was getting the local community involved, and that's nice. So all too often hotels, especially I suppose, in what should be an area that's accessible to the locals because it's right on the waterfront, as you said. You overlook a little nature reserve where lots of people walk their dogs, and all too often it can feel like these sort of out of town investors have come in, I suppose, with a load of money and built this very prestigious hotel, and it's famous people and rich people coming down and drinking on the terrace. But you never had that reputation. Straight away, people were coming in and eating and drinking. I know you got involved with the sort of local food festival. Was that a very conscious effort to make sure that you were part of the community?
Yes, definitely. We wanted it to be a hotel that people wanted to come to from the local community. We never ever set out for it to be elitist in any way, shape or form. And I think in fact, to be honest, we set ourselves a target of being a 4-star hotel because of the facilities that we wanted to provide. It was never necessarily about the standards there. We always wanted to exceed customers' expectations, but to attract the local community was very important to us. And yeah, I've been involved in the local community for quite a long time. I was in the Chamber of Trade. I still am actively involved with the local Chamber of Trade and Commerce, and I was president in the year 2000 with them. And I then took a break from the from the Chamber of Trade, because as a Chamber of Trade, we developed the Food Festival. And along with Mary Reeder, I was a co-founder, which was 20 years ago. We did it as a project for the millennium,
Wow.
which was great fun. And every year for 20 years, we delivered the festival, which got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Incredible.
And it was a great success.
Exceptional. Yeah.
Grew from being just a high street event onto the Quamps, and it got a national reputation as being one of the finest food festivals.
It is
and
amazing.
we attracted a lot of the celebrity chefs to come and do demonstrations, and yeah, it was really good. And from that, we had fringe events all year round for the festival. So it was known as an all year round event, even though it was only concentrated on the weekend of the market, was two of the days. But it was really interesting, and it was only after we had decided to do 20 years, and that would be enough. There was a few of us who were on the original committee, and it was time to hand over. So we handed over to the Real Food Festival Company, a guy who lives locally but has a very successful business in London and does food markets professionally. It's not as a commercial venture for him even. Well, it will be eventually, but he wants to keep it going in the way that we had it as very much a community event. Sadly, obviously because of the pandemic, it wasn't able to happen last year. So whether it can happen this year now, we're not quite sure. But normally? I do hope May. Yeah, we did move it. I think, to be fair, this year they're looking to move it to June, and that's really in readiness for next year when it's the Queen's Jubilee again. Yes,
yeah, I was going to say,
it's Diamond, I think. Yeah, so which is in June. So I think they're going to try and get it so it's in line with that.
Yeah,
so,
fantastic event, brilliant.
But yeah, really, it's good to be part of the community with that. So I've always kept myself involved.
And then through that, I was reading a little bit about the Christchurch Food Festival Education Trust.
Yes.
Is that still running?
Yes, very much so.
And that was about helping, with I always think we have a responsibility, I guess, in our sector to understand food and drink and where it comes from,
Absolutely.
both the impact on the planet, but also the impact on humans. So what is that trust?
And that's run very much by, there's a small group of us who are trustees, but very much at the forefront, and the leader is Mary Reeder on that. Mary goes with chefs into schools, into junior schools, and teaches food education. They do demonstrations, exactly where food comes from, using fresh ingredients, looking at influences from all over the world, different food cultures, basically making people very much aware. I think when the curriculums released, sort of food technology wasn't necessarily a big part of it. We wanted to make sure it was, and now we've got Colin Nash from the 3 Tons, for example. We'll go in with Mary to a lot of the junior schools and do thousands of students every year to basically educate them. And
and
it's
is all
ongoing.
Local schools, basically.
All local schools, all local Christchurch. Okay. I think we have stretched out as far as Ringwood.
Yeah.
But obviously we are really, it's a Christchurch-based charity.
And this is educating kids where food comes from,
Yes.
how to
cook, how to cook it,
what's good to eat, presumably.
What is good to eat, yes, exactly.
Amazing.
The 5 a day again, just going through all everything and trying to get them. We've got little booklets that we give out, so they've got things to take away, and we've got our own aprons and memorabilia.
Okay.
So.
And this is a self-funding? Or is it,
Yes.
it's a charity?
Basically, it's a charity. We have to fundraise. We've been given a legacy. We've been given donations. We raise money from the main food festival to provide funds for the education trust. And we're probably going to, at this time, we have a little bit of funding available, so we're going to try and to give out grants to people to support what schools are doing, because obviously at the moment we're not allowed to go into schools, actual sort of face-to-face, but we are looking at an initiative to do something like Zoom. Yeah. Can we do a Zoom demonstration? Can we do that sort of thing?
Okay, well, we need to talk more about that separately, because I interviewed Naomi Duncan from Chefs in Schools recently, so a charity up in London, and was chatting about, my wife's a primary school teacher. We have some schools come into the restaurant. And we did a sort of a bake-off thing recently where they had to come in and judges are kind of assessing their food and stuff like that. But the kids absolutely love it, and I think it's such an important responsibility. So I think as a sector, the more we can do locally. So we'll have a good chat about that.
We'll do.
I want to touch a little bit then, just to sort of draw to a close as we're nearly out of time. Around the industry and around the pandemic. So pre-pandemic, certainly in the restaurant side of the industry, and this is probably national, but definitely local, there was a real oversupply in restaurants. It was really hard to find chefs. It had become it felt like a very competitive couple of years. The rollout, I suppose, of so many sort of, chain restaurants locally. We had, sort of BH2, I think, was it open with 15 or 16 different restaurants. How was trade pre-pandemic? What was your experience of the sort of the last 24 months, I suppose? We had Brexit and elections. Was things still positive, or was it challenging? Had it changed much from the sort of a decade ago, I suppose?
It'd become much more challenging. Things had changed. I think it's very much a competitor market. People were looking at prices of menus, etc. There was a lot more consideration for when they went out, and there was a lot more places for people to go, so the choices were there, and obviously there's only so many people to go around, so it was a tough time. I think a tough time for everybody. Things had slightly stagnated, I suppose we could always say, in terms of turnover for the restaurant. Fortunately, the hotel was still doing particularly well. But the good thing, what we always wanted to encourage people that came here, was that they would be able to have a variety of places to go and eat. I mean, that was a concerted effort. We didn't want to attract a market where people came here for a weekend, stayed and ate in Friday night, Saturday night, Sunday lunch, then went home, because they wouldn't come back again. We wanted to show them that this area is worth coming back to time and again. So we always encouraged people to go out to eat in other restaurants. But I say it was very tough with the chains coming in. Christchurch, we sort of seem to have loads and loads and loads of restaurants opening up. Some have now gone by the wayside, but those that deliver quality, those that deliver appeal, survive through these.
And then your experience of the pandemic, I suppose, and maybe we'll touch on some of these restaurants and whether they will all get through, but how's your experience been? Have you had to go out and borrow a load of cash? Has it been terrifying? Have you managed to batten down the hatches and hold on tight? Are you stoic, or have you has it been a sort of edge of the seat kind of ride? Just talk us through it a little bit.
The whole thing's been edge of the
all
seat.
Of the above.
All of the above. I think the difficulty at the beginning was not knowing. It was, now we're a little bit more experienced in it, but when it first started, it was a real panic situation, because what would we have to do? What was going on? We were, offered the opportunity of the job retention scheme, which was a great help. We were offered the opportunity of the business rate relief, which again was a great help. But obviously, as a business, it's costly for a hotel to run. The expenses to keep it open month on month, regardless of whether there's anybody here or not, is expensive, because you cannot shut everything down. Especially now in this time of year, you've got to keep everything warm and going and whatever it is, and You know, we in the first lockdown, we closed down our pool, everything completely. And then it was so expensive to restart it all up again. We had maintenance issues, which wouldn't have happened had we kept it going. So there's all these things to think about. Then in the first instance, we had to go to the bank for a loan, because that was what we were being offered, the CBILS loan. And we worked closely with the bank to get it, but they were giving us at the time that we wouldn't reopen for the first time until September. So it was a really big long-term cash, and we thought, God, how do we get through this? And our loan was sort of based on that basis that we wouldn't reopen until September. On reflection, then when we did reopen, which was right in time for the summer, it was a great kick. You know, we all did really well. I think we suffered we didn't suffer. I think we took advantage of the good weather. The Eat Out to Help Out scheme helped many, and it was really, really busy. And we didn't have to touch our loan at that stage. And then suddenly we were back into another lockdown, and then another lockdown. So effectively, the 6 months that the bank had forecast we would be closed, we have been closed. So now we're edging into the time when we've been instructed it'll be time to start paying back the loan, and we still haven't got any idea when we're going to reopen. It's going to be tough again on cash flow, but we've got that loan still in place, so we have to touch some of it. We'll have to touch it now to keep us going. I mean, because we at the beginning, because again we were told we wouldn't reopen until September, and we were going into the winter, so we had to do the redundancy review to look at jobs and see how many people we would have to lose. So we had to set up consultancy, because we thought we'd have to lose 25% of our staff at least. Touch wood, unfortunately, we haven't had to do that, because we were able to reopen for the summer, and we've kept the majority of staff on, which is great news. So the same team will be here to relaunch again and hopefully go in for another busy summer. So
well, that's good. So you've got yourself into a sort of a holding position where you can get through, because we are now faced with this unknown. As I think, you know, we were all hoping it would be Easter, April. Now we're being told, you know, maybe May, and then there's, you know, it seems to be flicking between those two dates. We're all paying a significant chunk for furlough, for, you know, pensions and
that's
NIs
it, pensions and national insurance contributions.
which I'm sure is costing you, you know, thousands or tens of thousands a month in the same way as us and across the sector. And I know that's you know, really hurting a lot of hospitality businesses, because they've got zero revenue for so long. But we're hanging on in there desperate, because if we can trade for the summer, you know, maybe we can get ourselves out of this mess. I suppose, what's your thoughts on how long, you know, either you personally or the industry can hang on for? And if you were sat in a room, if you got the opportunity to have a coffee with Rishi and with Boris, what would you say to them?
I think there's a twofold. Personal point of view, you've got the harrowing scenes that you see on television night in, night out on the news, when you see the hospitals suffering so much and the NHS working so hard, and you get realistic about the pandemic and the effects of the pandemic, and you know you've got to do your bit, and we're doing our bit. We're just asked to do our bit a bit more than others. It's costing us a lot more than it is costing others, but you know, if I was having that coffee, I mentioned Rob Rees earlier, who lives in Melbourne, and you know, he said that they'd had 6 months of lockdown, tough, but once they got through it, they were COVID free. Now a new strain has just come in, which has changed things now at New Year, but it seemed to work by doing it properly. I think this stop and start hasn't necessarily helped, and had we, in hindsight, done 6 months in one fell swoop, we might be in a very different position, but who knows with the new strains coming in. I think it's very difficult for them in the position they're in, because we've all got to pay back everything they're giving out in support grants. I would suggest that their support grants aren't genuinely realistic. I think it needs to be wider spread. I mean, to put a limit on the grant of £9,000 if your rateable value is above 51,000 is tough when, you know, our rateable value is 350,000, so you know the 9,000 isn't going to touch the sides.
Well, particularly when you didn't qualify the first time
exactly,
round.
Yeah,
I know. Over 51k, got 0 in the first round, and 9k in the second round. You're like, wow, people in the first round, you know, less than 51k, got 25k. So
I know.
Does seem crazy, doesn't it?
So I feel for them. I do feel for them. I feel more for us. I feel more for us in our industry. But, you know, and I think that, how can I say it? We've lobbied a lot. Locally, we've been very lucky with the people who have been lobbying on our behalf. You know, you mentioned you've spoken to Robin Hudson. He's been lobbying for the Minister for Hospitality, which, when you listen to the debate in Parliament, well, in Westminster Hall, it was a genuine feel of support for the industry, without a doubt, cross-party support for the industry. Didn't result in us getting a Minister for Hospitality at the table, which I think will in the future happen. I think we'll be recognised as one of the key industries in the UK who contribute hugely to the economy. So I do think we're worthy of a seat at the table. We're just very fortunate here in this area that our MPs seem to be very good at communicating directly with Rishi, for example, and getting our message through directly as best they can. So,
what's your thoughts on VAT and rates? Do you think?
My thoughts on VAT are that they need to retain the 5%, definitely, because whilst it's everybody's saying about it now, you know, 5%, it only works when we're trading. You know, we're not trading, so it doesn't help us at all.
I think, what have we traded? Nine weeks properly of a 12-month period at the end of the day.
So it's absolutely essential that VAT remains at 5%.
Optimistic?
I'm optimistic that will happen.
Yeah.
I think the lobbying will be enough.
I think it's key, particularly at the minute when so many of us are, you know, working hard to try and retain teams. You know, with a 3 or 4 month closure, we could easily, you know, be laying off our teams. It wouldn't be the right thing to do, sort of, you know, morally and ethically. So we're taking the pain, like you say, we're taking more pain than most other sectors. And because we're in hospitality, I think in the main we're decent human beings. It's always humans first and business second. So we want to look after our teams, and I'm excited to stand by them. But you also go, my goodness, you know, I'm dipping in the pocket every single week to keep these people on. And you just think, you know, you think how much you pay. You mentioned your business rateable value. You know, every year. You know, if I looked at the support we've been given, I don't know what it would be. You know, less than 2 weeks taxes that I pay in a year. You think even if you gave us a year's worth of tax that we pay, which would be way more than anything that we've got, you know, we will pay that back over the next 10 years. We'll pay that back over and over and over again. But yeah, we do seem to be a sector right in the eye of the storm. Whereby, you know, it feels like a bit of a no-brainer. It's like, help us out, and and we'll get through it.
I think the thing about us, you know, the events industry has been decimated with this. Fortunately, they could, how can I say, they have sadly had to make people redundant, but they've actually taken the plunge to do that, because knowing that their events were not coming back. I think this bit of in-betweeners, we don't know how long we're closed for. You do keep people on. You don't want to make them redundant. So, as you say, we take the hit. So it's got to come good for us.
Yeah, spending a lot. I feel slightly better when I read that Wetherspoons were spending, I think it was £4 million. It was a week that they were burning their cash rate, but then they go out and they raise 100 million. I think, I haven't quite got the access to do that.
Isn't it? Yeah. We have been told that everything we do now is going to be a loan. Anything else you need to survive, there will be no more grants. It will be a loan, sadly, and it's got to be paid back with interest.
And that's it. Unless you can get access to investors, you know, debt is a pretty harsh thing. If you're in a tight margin business anyway, add all of that debt and that need to repay that debt. I do hope that's the other thing they could do is extend that repayment period from 5 years to 10 years, and maybe do another year's interest free, just to give us a chance. You know, if you give us the VAT and the business rates, give us 12 months to get back up on our feet, and absolutely, you know, we'll do our bit and we'll pay. Frustrating though it may be, as you said, it's a pandemic. It's, you know, it's nobody's fault. It's just something we've got to deal with. We've got to draw to a close. So. Will you do anything else? How much longer? You know, what's next? Can you see yourself with? You said you wouldn't have 16 others. Would you have 2 others, or is this? Are you happy with?
No. Probably about 6 years ago, we looked at another site in Maidenhead, on the riverside again, but we just couldn't make the numbers add up for us. No, I think because we're low key small investors. I'm happy with this now.
You're happy. Good.
Yeah.
I respect that hugely.
Yeah.
As somebody who's probably opened things and gone, added more and not to the same level as lots of businesses. Mm-hmm. I don't really need the complexity. People keep knocking on the door and go, do you want to get involved with this? Do you want to get involved with that? Not really.
I think yours is so diverse, aren't they, though? Everyone is very different.
Stupidly, I get excited by the location of the space and think, what could work for that, rather than just rolling out the same concept. Twitter's a dangerous place. Somebody got in touch a few days ago and said, Mark, you should really get involved with this opportunity. Would you like to? And I just sort of fairly flippantly replied and said, it's a great idea. If you find somebody with the cash, then we're practically the dream team. Thinking I'd never hear from them again, and then I got an email sort of 2 hours later with somebody who'd seen this and said, "I'd be interested to invest."
Oh,
and
no.
I was like, "Stop it! Stop creating these opportunities."
Yeah.
And I was like, "Well, I'm definitely kicking the can down the road." I was like, "Can we chat post summer? I just want to try and focus on getting reopened this year and getting some sense of normality back before I do anything else. Don't need the stress." If you could go back 20 years, I'm thinking what you were doing 20 years ago. So that would have been, you'd have been in the restaurants, I suppose, wouldn't you, in Spinters, or maybe back a little bit, Thor, and give yourself some advice. If you could sit down at the bar and have a coffee or a beer or a glass of wine with yourself, knowing what you know now, 20 years later, is there anything you would say to yourself?
Why did I bother? No, it was. I think my advice would have been to give this a go. It's what was meant to be. Wanted to be an independent hotelier, wanted to try it out, wanted to see how it go. Unfortunately, we're still here, which is great news. Because honestly, at the time when we were getting the money together to build, I honestly saw the fact that I would get to opening the doors and that would be it for me. That would be as far as we could go, and it would have to go. But we battled on, and we are still here. So I think my advice would be have another drink and think about it again.
Hang on in there.
Stay
for the long term.
Yeah.
Well, look, brilliant. Thank you for sparing the time. Really good finally get to come. Like I say, you're not far away from me. Good to have the excuse to come for a coffee. If people want to find out more, follow either you personally or the hotel, is there a particular social media channel, or is it just best to hit the website? Where should they go?
Best to hit the website and then get links to everything. Yeah. So it's straightforward. www.captainsclubhotel.com.
I'm impressed you remember. All too often at this point of the call, people look blankly and go, "Oh my God, what's the web address?"
Well, yes, if you asked me for my Twitter feed, it would be I couldn't tell you, or my Facebook.
You're quite private, I think, aren't you? Looking you up beforehand, there's not a huge amount about either of you over the internet. So well done for
keep it private.
Yeah, for being grounded and being in the industry for the right reason and it not being a trophy. So, but really enjoyed the chat. Thank you so much, and I will put some details up on the show notes on the website for all of the links through to your various stuff. But best of luck getting through, and hopefully I can come back in a few months and sit on the terrace and have a beer.
Yes, I think we've got that gin and tonic booked.
Perfect.
Thank you.
I hope you enjoyed that episode. Don't forget to support the show. You can head over to the Patreon page or via the PayPal button for a one-off show of appreciation. Every penny you donate saves me filling the show full of ads and means I can invest in the right kit and the right toys to keep this show on the air. Those links and the links that Tim and I discussed and the newsletter buttons as well are all on the website humansofhospitality.co.uk. But for now, that's it. I will be back next Monday with a brand new show. Enjoy your week. Cheers.